Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris. This is of course the RS Simulations PC-21 from Microsoft Flight Sim. We're here at YSHL Shell Harbour Airport on the east coast of Australia, and I'm going to be demonstrating some aerobatics to give you a little bit of inspiration on what you can do in this aircraft. I'll also talk through what is difficult or almost impossible in this aircraft and why that is. And I'll do some flying from inside and outside so that you can see both. But the main reason is I'm going to give you some parameters to work with so you can make your aerobatics nice and consistent. First off, we'll talk through some setups and what is useful to help you out in terms of positioning your aircraft. So first off, I've set the course bar to the runway orientation. That means that if I can't see the runway during looping maneuvers, I can at least look down and I've got a good idea which way I'm facing. I've also set the altimeter to a setting that allows 0 feet, or it shows me 0 feet on the runway when my tyres are on the tarmac, and that'll give me height above the airfield and therefore gate heights to let me know over the top of each maneuver if I've got enough space to complete it. Finally, you're going to want to play with the smoke. Smoke is enabled on this aircraft. You'll want to remove the underwing tanks in the weights page, which is here, external 1 and 2. Whilst I'm here, it's also worth setting co-pilot to 0. That means that any switches in the back seat that are incorrect won't give you a caution warning in the front. With the underwing tanks removed, you can go into the instructor page down to the lower right, and you can toggle till you get ESG, external smoke generator, smoke both. You can set it to left or right. They're symmetrical stores, but I think the smoke only comes out from either or. But smoke both gives us both. We'll go back to engine page, and then smoke switch is down to the lower right to go smoke armed. The toggle switch for it is logo light. It's always worth checking to make sure the smoke works, which it does. I'll try and remember to do a little bit of smoke generation whilst we're flying around, but not too much because it is fairly persistent and it'll get in the way of our visibility. So with that done, we're going to run in for our first maneuver. The first maneuver we're going to do is the loop. Fairly simple, but it's important to do because that'll give you an idea of the performance of your aircraft and your own techniques, and that then will give you a gate height for each of your looping maneuvers. So more of that in a moment. I'll use 250 knots as my general speed for starting each maneuver, and I'll use a base height of 200 feet above the airfield. So at the start and end of each maneuver, that's what I hope to achieve, 250 knots and 200 feet. For that, I'm going to use about 75% torque. That's the top instrument on the right hand panel with Eng selected, and that just allows a bit of consistency, and I don't move the throttle much unless I note that my speed is off parameters. So here we go for the loop. Power's back to keep the speed under control, looking at the altitude for the 200 feet, lined up with the line feature. And there we go, power set. Clearing above, smoke on, pitching up. Look at the G meter, about 4.5 to 5 G is ideal. Looking to the wingtips to get those equal. Pulling back on the stick more as I slow down to keep the nose tracking. Over the top, I'm looking at my altitude, about 2,400 feet. And I can follow down the runway and the smoke. I'll keep the stick back until I start accelerating, and then I'll ease off to achieve 200 feet and 250 knots. Smoke off. I want to go straight into the next maneuver, same as a loop, but this is a Cuban 8, so we're going to fly over the top, use the line feature as we pitch back, and I'm going to roll out with 45 degrees nose down. Looking at the HUD, 45 degrees, you can do a hesitation or a slow roll, or just a regular roll, looking for 1,000 feet on the altitude or the height, and then pitching back up through the smoke to get to 200 feet, and slightly fast, but we can use that extra speed for the next maneuver, which is a reverse Cuban 8. So pitch up per loop, 45 degrees nose up, power set, looking for 1,500 feet on the height, roll inverted, pause and pull. Make sure it's a firm pull because we're slower speed, we need to get that nose tracking. And I'm coming back down towards the runway, and the speed is back towards 250 knots. A little bit of power reduction to maintain the speed, and roughly 200 feet. Next looping maneuver is going to be an Immelman, or a roll off the top, followed by a split S, also known as a half roll pull through. Power set, clear, pitching up as per a loop. But this time, once we've assured that we've lined up on the line feature, we're going to wait until 15 degrees nose up inverted, pause, roll, and by the time we finish our roll, the nose will be back on the horizon. We can't see the runway, so I'm looking down at the course bar to make sure I'm lined up. We don't want the speed to increase because that'll increase our turn radius and it causes issues. But at this stage, 170 knots is fine. I'll pitch 15 degrees nose up, power stays set, I'll roll inverted, pause, pull, nice prompt pull all the way to the light tickle, like Buffett if you can feel it, And then the second half is per a loop. Gain a bit of height, therefore gain a bit of energy. Now we're going into max rate turn. So mill power, flight path marker around the horizon, pulling back on the stick, enough to keep the speed under control. If the speed increases, my turn radius is also increasing. Keep looking out, keeping the speed consistent. Now using the line feature, and I should end up back where I started. Pull the power back to where it was, and we're ready for the next maneuver. From here we can go into another looping maneuver, which is going to be a 3/4 loop with a quarter turn. So looking back over to my line feature, as I get towards 30 or 20 degrees towards the vertical, I'll start to roll away from the line feature. Looking down at the course bar, I've set my heading bug for 90 degrees off, and then power and pitch is required for 200 feet and 250 knots. In here to a Canadian brake, 5 degrees nose up, roll underneath, mill power because I'm pulling hard around the corner, just like a max boss rate turn. I'm going back towards the runway. I can't see it, so I'm using the course bar, 90 degrees off there, pull the power for 250, and we'll go for a cloverleaf. For a cloverleaf, you need to pitch up early so you don't bust the crowd line. I'm going to go to the right, so I'm pitching up, rolling to the right, using my line feature to roll to. There it is, looking at the altitude, which is 2,200 feet, so I need to pull significantly because I'm quite low. Power to control the speed, pitch to get down to 200 feet. And there we go. Next we'll go into a wing over. Wing overs can be whatever you want them to be. So I'm just going to set the power, set about 40 degrees nose up, overbank slightly, and then pitch around. You can use these maneuvers to go back to crowd line and go for a max rate turn, but we're going to use it to parallel the runway and do a barrel roll onto the runway. So I use my course bar for my lineup. Obviously you can use the runway's orientation, speed and power, and then pitching. Set the power, pitching nose up, feet on the horizon about 30 degrees. I'll start rolling towards the runway. Pitching, rolling nice and consistently, 90 degrees off the runway, using the runway as the line feature, keep the pitch coming, and we end up back on the line feature. Now you can also do a reverse wing over, is what I call it anyway, so you can roll, you can pull away from the runway center line, look at the course bar, that's about 70 degrees off, roll underneath, and then pitch back. So wing overs can be whatever you want them to be. That completes our sequence. I'll jump to the external view to show you what that looks like from outside, and then after that we'll position and demonstrate why stall turns and anything requiring rudder are difficult to achieve. So what I'm going to do now is just demonstrate why stall turns and anything else requiring rudder authority is pretty tricky in this aircraft. And largely it's down to Asobo's programming, or the variables that the developers can use to make it work. But they have tried to fix it, and there are some workarounds which I'll talk about afterwards. But here we go. We're down the centre line of the runway, about 250 knots. And I'm going to put the rudder in. So there's rudder. Lots of nose track, but the actual changing of heading is only happening about 1 degree every second or 2 seconds, which is not a lot. And when you do a stall turn, you need a lot of rudder authority to get the nose tracking over the horizon. So what I'll do now is try and demonstrate a stall turn, and largely it's down to luck. If you can get it perfect in the vertical, that's not necessarily a good thing, because then it turns into a tail slide. You want a little bit of left or right wing low so that it flops that way. And here we go, pitching up for the stall turn. Pitching up for a loop, pitching into the vertical, looking at the left wing for my vertical reference. Now, it doesn't matter where I put the rudder, because the rudder's not really changing the heading of the aircraft much. I'll try and yaw to the left. But you'll notice that even though I'm yawing to the left, I'm going right, because that's where the aircraft model believes the aircraft is, and we just flop out. So it's possible with a bit of practice you can get in the vertical with a bit of wing low on one side, and it'll stall turn-ish, but only as a result of running out of speed. And that completes this video. I hope this provided a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of technique to help facilitate some better aerobatics and your enjoyment of this fantastic aeroplane. Like I said, this is Iris Simulations PC-21, due for release very soon, and I hope you've enjoyed that. Please like and subscribe, help support the channel, and I'll hope you join me next time.